So today we're going to be starting our fake news and misleading news lesson as part of our news literacy unit. So for today we're going to be focusing on distinguishing between the different types of false or misleading news stories. Between the different types of false and misleading news stories, we're going to be only focusing on 7 different types just for the sake of simplicity. But be aware that there's more different kinds of ways that an article could be misleading out there. All right, so our working definition of fake news is going to be false stories that spread on the internet and other media, usually created to influence political views or as a joke. So what is fake news designed to do? Fake news is designed to trick viewers into believing false facts and narratives to push a certain political viewpoint. So one caution before we begin this unit is that a story does not need to be 100% fake for it to be inaccurate news. Oftentimes, it's not stories that are 100% fake and made up that you need to be worried about. Oftentimes, it's articles that are out of context, and that have take real facts out of context, and are partially in some way partially true, because they're a little bit harder to confirm as true or false than, say, a completely made up story. And another thing to keep in mind is that just because a news story gets one fact right, gets only because just because a news story gets a single fact wrong doesn't mean it is entirely unreliable. If a news story has 99 facts in it and it has only one fact incorrect, that's generally not going to be a problem if you're working with a already reliable news source that prints corrections when they make mistakes. Mistakes are going to be made sometimes when news is shared, but it becomes a problem when most of the story is inaccurate and or the news source is consistently inaccurate or misleading. So we're going to start with the 7 types of disinformation misleading news. So we're going to start with the first one, satire parody. They're usually designed to make a viewer laugh. They often provide commentary criticism. Sometimes they're made up to resemble real news, but is revealed to be a joke once the article is actually read. Generally, satire and parody is not harmful unless it's taken out of context and presented as real news. So I took a screenshot of an article from a very popular satire website, The Onion, and the headline reads, "White House officials watch in horror as Major Biden pulls Marine One straight out of the sky." And for those who don't know who Major Biden is President Biden's German Shepherd dog. And so you can tell by the absurdity of the headline and the digital image of a dog bringing a military helicopter out of the sky that it is satire, it is a joke, it's obviously fake and for entertainment. So we're going to talk about a more common form of misleading news is misleading content. So misleading content is when information is framed a certain way and usually taken out of context to frame an individual or issue. So, so this particular article, if you take a look at the headline, "Oh, the places the woke will go, Dr. Seuss canceled for racial undertones." If you look at the headline, you notice that that headline is very opinionated, is very opinionated, emotional in tone. It has a bit of sarcasm to it. But the issue with the article is that it takes most of what actually happened out of context. So the school system mentioned in the article, the Virginia school system mentioned in the article, did not actually ban those books. They didn't. Those books are still available to students, still on the shelves. The school district isn't recommending certain Dr. Seuss titles anymore for students to read for Read Across America Week. So it's just so framing it as a ban is a major exaggeration of what actually happened. So it is so it's so this one also, because it is, yes, there's something being done with the Dr. Seuss books, it's partially true, but largely false and made to mislead viewers, and especially viewers, to mislead viewers into believing a certain conclusion about the story. So this one is pretty close to what you would think of fake news as. So these are fake articles, screenshots made to look like real news sources. This particular article is really notable for its strange headline and its photo. That is not a picture of real women in the military. That photo is from a Jessica Simpson movie. So that's not a picture of actual real female service members. And it's also notable for its kind of head-scratching headline. Should women be allowed to breastfeed on the battlefield? Well, a little bit of thinking common sense. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Who would take a baby out onto a battlefield? Well, would the military? The military wouldn't allow that. That doesn't make any sense. So a lot of times, a little bit of common sense goes a long way. In the case of these news articles, because they tend to resemble as much as possible the actual style of news articles. Note the CNN article. They might be worthwhile to take a look at the actual original. Take a look at the actual news organization's site, CNN, to see if you can find that particular article to confirm if it's imposter news or not. So let's move on to the next thing. So this is kind of more classic fake news. Fabricated content. So they're largely made up stories. These stories are usually emotional in tone, centered on political issues and figures. These stories are actually quite easily debunked, because if you look up other news sources and they mention nothing of the same story, if you can't find any reliable known source that talks about it, it's probably fake. So one thing to note about fabricated content is that you are more likely to fall for fabricated content that confirms something you believe in, or aligns with your opinions. So take a look at this article right here. Trump has the votes, wins the Nobel Peace Prize. This fake article from 2018. Now, if you're a person who admires former President Trump or tends to agree with his policies, you're more likely to to believe in this article because it confirmed the idea of that politician getting a Nobel Peace Prize kind of confirms your idea that this person is somebody to be admired. So it's important that you check yourself and check your own biases, because it's not going to be the stuff you disagree with that's going to hurt you and fool you. It's going to be the stuff that you actually agree with that is going to be more likely to go under your radar. All right, so we're going to talk about false context. So false context is real information taken out of context to usually promote a certain opinion. So if you look at the social media post, are Congress hard at work? Yes, those are real images, but if you kind of look at the furniture, it doesn't look very familiar. And none of these politicians seem familiar. This doesn't look like the U.S. quite look like the U.S. Congress. Well, it isn't. It's the Brazilian Parliament. Images of the Brazilian Parliament of them falling asleep. So, one thing that you can do to combat false context is look at multiple sources, help you figure out if it's false. Consider, especially with images, doing a reverse Google image search to see if you can find the images in another place, in another context. All right, to the next one. So manipulated content is when content and information is changed to deceive. Now this one also technically falls under false context. These images were digitally edited for a travel insurance advertisement. However, they were taken out of context and framed as a actual photo of animals in the wild. Know how realistic it looks, and how realistic it looks. It's seeing doesn't necessarily mean believing when it comes to online photos. Of course, part of the reason this photo went around is because it's kind of a cute photo. You want to believe that the lion and zebra are getting along, but in the actual wild, these two animals would generally stay away from each other. All right, so we're going to talk about false connection. This is really common with the clickbait articles you'll find on social media. So their headlines and images don't support the actual content of the article. So this article is about celebrity marriages and for their photo, they have a picture of Octavia Spencer and Kevin Costner. These two actors have never been married to each other, so it's a false connection. They have nothing to do with the actual article at hand, and the headline implies that they have been married when that is not true. So always, it's tempting it's really, really tempting to go with your gut instinct and go straight off the headline and the image you see, but just the headline and the image are supposed to tease you into reading the article. A headline and image is not the whole story, so make sure you read before sharing. I know it's tempting to just say, I'll read it later, but it's best to read before you share. So we're going to take a quick break right here, and we're going to come back and finish up this presentation.